Back on Morning Line, thanks for joining us, talking elder law. Your questions, comments about things like power of attorney, wills, if you have a question about the stimulus, maybe probate work, a lot of folks dealing with that. Our guest this morning is Barbara McGinnis with Takis McGinnis Elder Law Attorneys here in town. And Barbara, we've got Ann that waited through the break. Let's take her phone call before we continue our conversation on some of those other issues. Good morning, Ann. How are you?
Good morning. I just have a quick question. Friday, I got a phone call stating they were from Texas and a lawsuit had been attached to my Social Security number. And I got the same call again yesterday. Now, I am hoping and assuming that this was a scam, but if it is, who do I contact to notify about this, and how do I verify that this is exactly what it is?
Hey, by the way, were they trying to get personal information from you, or what did they say?
That was it. Friday, I was sitting waiting to get my COVID shot, and I frankly forgot about it over the weekend until the second call came yesterday. And it was left as a voicemail on my phone because yesterday I was enjoying the sunshine. Sure. Yeah. It left a number to call, and I was not going to call back the number. It just stated that it was attached in Texas and that I needed to return the phone call.
Okay, well, I can tell you right now that's a scam, and I would not answer or call them back under any circumstance. And you're right, Ann, you knew that. But Barbara, what about that? There's no question. I don't even know any more details. Social Security does not work that way. They don't call you. There's no stupid lawsuit in Texas. So if you get one of those calls, blow it off. Don't even give it a second thought. But what should she do, Barbara?
Well, in Tennessee, you can actually, this is fairly easy to do, report this potential scam to the Tennessee Division of Consumer Affairs. And the consumer can file a complaint, of course, electronically, but there's phone numbers that you can call. The first step in filing a complaint would be to and there's lots of people you can call, right? This is not one of those situations where you're going to call the local police because they're just going to tell you to report it. You might report it to Social Security themselves. There are there's complaint forms, but I would just call the Tennessee Commission on Consumer Affairs.
Yeah, you're right. And to be honest with you, Barbara, I think reporting it, that's fine if you want to take the time to do it. The best thing sometimes, if there's a lot of it, is report it to the media and we'll get the word out. But the truth is, tracking these people down and what department with the state can do on this, next to nothing. Even when they take your money, if you're taking it enough that you give them, sensitive information and they somehow hack into your, bank account or get money from you that you send them, once you figure out it's a scam, you're never getting that money back. It's gone forever, and no state investigator is going to be able to help you on it. So just don't.
I think that's true.
Yeah, it's just not going to happen.
I think that's absolutely true, but a lot of times, as new scams sort of come about, and there's always new versions of old scams, just making sure some of these entities like the Consumer Affairs, even like the Council on Aging, they do a good job of helping folks recognize scams. Right. This is what's going on. And because Ann was bright enough to recognize that as a scam and not give the information out, some people that think, oh, there's some possibility of money, I'm going to call them back, and because I don't want to miss out on that. Right. And they really would have called back and given Social Security information to them. So sometimes reporting is just about building some awareness so that other folks don't fall victim.
That's right.
I did not buy into the scam, but I have had scam callers call me. Remember when the one that was going around was the IRS? You're in trouble with the IRS, and if you don't call back, blah, blah, blah. So that one was a couple of years ago.
Oh, yeah.
And
well, they scare people is what it does.
There's lots out there.
That's one of my biggest concerns with my folks. And my parents several years ago, no problem. They would have been like Ann, but they're to the point now where they're beginning to slow down a bit and they're more trusting. And if you hit them with something like, not so much that there's money, but that you're in trouble, then all of a sudden they just focus on that without stepping back and thinking this whole thing sounds hokey, you know? And it's to the point where my brother and I really were trying to limit their access to the telephone in their assisted living facility because, you know, these slime bag scam artists, and that's exactly what they are. They're dregs of the earth, scam artists targeting the most vulnerable, make these calls to them. And my dad, you know, he no longer really has the credit card to do it. He would fall for it potentially. He never lost any money, but I've done stories on these poor people who cannot afford to lose the money that fall for it. And it's just because they're trusting and they're not thinking the way they once did, Barbara.
That's even part of the impetus behind the change in the Medicare numbers. When the government changed our Medicare numbers from being your Social Security number to this random number, it was designed to help prevent Medicare-related fraud or scams, because some folks will forever remember their Social Security number and could share that.
Yep.
I promise you, very few people remember those random Medicare numbers where they can just rattle it off without pulling their card out of their pocket, because, you know, they're just, you know, a nonsensical set of numbers and letters. That's our new Medicare number.
Yeah, and that's great because Social Security, you know, it's funny, we're going to take calls, but you know what my dad did at one point when he continued to get all these calls, once he was certain it was and I've told this story before, a scam artist calling him, and he knew it was, and it's not a recording. He went and bought one of those air horns, and he would take it and put it right up to the receiver, and he'd say, "Oh, excuse me, sir," and then he just blast the air horn right over the phone, and he would just chuckle to himself, imagining the scumbag on the other side of the phone trying to scam him, getting his eardrum blown out by the loud noise over the phone. And I said, "Dad, good for you. Good for you. I mean, it only works if it's a real person." But funny, after he did that a few times, those people stopped calling him. Let's go to Kendrith is on line 1. Kendrith, good morning. What can we do for you? Are you there, Kendrith? Kendrith, are you there? Hello, can you hear me? I'll put Kendrith on, maybe I got the name wrong. We'll see if we can check that. Lisa, good morning. Go ahead, Lisa.
Hi, good morning. I am 57 years old, and I have been disabled for 8 years now. I have a spine injury, and I live by myself now, and I struggle each day with normal tasks like cleaning and cooking and so forth. And I've known people in the past to get help with things like that. I've contacted everybody I know to contact, and they say, well, there's just not resources for that type of help anymore, or they say they'll put me on a waiting list for 5 to 7 years. Are there programs out there that could help me stay in my home? Because if I can't care for myself, I don't want to sell my home and live in a nursing home. My money would not last there anyway. So are there options for people like me if I can't afford to pay somebody out of my disability income?
Okay, all right. What do you think, Barbara?
Well, honestly, I don't think there are many resources available, not without paying privately for that. A few things that I heard was that she does still have money, and she's probably receiving Social Security disability and not SSI, which means she doesn't automatically qualify for TennCare. And here's the thing about our TennCare Choices program that you and I were talking about in the very beginning of the show. We talked about the income cap. There is a net worth cap. By the way, you can own a house and receive TennCare benefits, but you are limited to $2,000 of countable resources. But the other thing in Tennessee is that we have a very high standard or a high bar of medical necessity to receive benefits. Right. And the reason I'm going through that is because you can receive choices at home but you still have to meet these the criteria of, and it's much more than just needing help with maintaining your house. They look at things like your ability to transfer from one seated surface to another, ambulation, toileting, can you toilet yourself, feeding, can you feed yourself, not grocery shop, not meal prep, but can you literally feed yourself, and then take your own medicines. Are you oriented? This person obviously sounded like she was completely cognitively intact. Can you communicate basic needs, and do you have any behavior problems? That's a very small list of things to grade someone on to provide help, and that's exactly what they do. So in Tennessee, you not only have to be low net worth, low income, but you have to be very, very dependent to receive home services. Things like the GNRC, calling that Greater Nashville area on, the name is so long, it's hard for even me. I think that's why we call it the GNRC. Call them, and they would know if there are services available in your community. That's another thing that varies greatly in Tennessee. Urban area resources versus the very rural area resources. So more likelihood of something being available if you're living, say, like in Davidson County or surrounding counties, as opposed to if you're living in Macon County or White County, where you're a lot more rural and services are less likely to be available.
Barbara, I hear from a lot of people just like Lisa sometimes, and I understand where she's coming from. Lisa, you were like my folks. They wanted to stay where they were. They didn't have the resources, but like Barbara just said, and you're right, Barbara, a lot of people want to know, are there services that allow me? There just aren't, okay? You're not going to get something free like that. It's just not there, unfortunately. And so the time may come for her, Barbara, where, she can live as long as she can in this house, but she may want to search around and look for some Medicaid qualified facilities, and then the time come perhaps where she sells her home and has the assets. And Shuri's right, those can be expensive. They can be up to $3,000, $4,000 a month. But then you move in, coupling that with your Social Security, and you pay for it while you can once you're in that facility, okay, with money from the sale of your house and your savings. And eventually that will be spent down until all you really have left is your Social Security or SSI. At that point, especially if you're already into that facility and you've been paying in, that puts you ahead of anyone else on a list that's on the outside. And if you transition from self-pay to Medicaid with your Social Security, that gives you a chance to live on. Now, you may not like that, and you may say, oh, I want to stay in my... But at some point, the rubber's going to hit the road, and you're not going to be able to live alone, and there's not going to be some asset out there that's going to allow you to stay where you are. And you just have to accept the idea of maybe doing that. My folks had to do it, and they're in the process of doing what I just described. But there are some nice facilities out there, as Barbara said earlier, I'll let her elaborate when we come back from the break, that aren't, a lot of people say nursing home, and they just have this vision of an isolated room with no visitors, and you're by yourself with doctors coming in and nurses tending to you. No. There are places that are like little apartment complexes, okay? And they're, it's social, and there's other people there just like you, and you can spend time. It's like a lot of folks don't like the idea of it until they get there. My folks hated it at first. Now that they're there, they would rather be no place else. We'll take a break. We'll be back with more and more of your calls. We'll come back to Kendra, who's back on the horn right after this.